Hello friends, welcome back to the 9 Acres, and this is Dale's Devotionals. Y'all, this series takes us on so many journeys, and as I continue throughout the devotional series, it not only helps me through encouragement that I hear from each of you, I also am reassured in the fact that I feel obligated to bring you these devotionals, so that in turn keeps me in the good word. Isn't it great when we can have those foundations set to continuously be in the Lord's word? This old chimney here behind me, I used it as a backdrop for this video because it's kind of been weighing on my mind. Every time I pull in the driveway, every time I leave, I see this old chimney. This is remnants of the old home that was here on the 9 acres. I can remember it as a kid. It hasn't existed ever since the 9 acres become into our visions. It burned down a long time ago. But the one thing that remains standing is this chimney. And yeah, it's weathered. Some people may think it's an eyesore in front of our house. But to me, it brings up a lot of really good attributions and some teachings that maybe we can take away from this old brick wall chimney. You know, we've heard about, people talk about, if this old house could talk, you know, if the windows could talk, oh, the stories they would tell. If the walls could talk, they would tell stories of great things that happen in this house, or even sorrowful times. We can apply that to this wall, right? If each one of these bricks were a memory of this homestead before we got here in the former family, what kind of stories would they tell? I mean, if we come around to the front of here and we look at the front of this old fireplace that was inside that house, right? With a fire insert. Look at the detail in the rocks, how they cemented each of these rocks in place to help cover those vents that blew the heat out. Look at the detail in the limestone, high quartz limestone that they used, that existed right here on this ground to make this mantle. Someone probably took a lot of pride in building that, right? The fact to make sure that all that was secure, to make sure that it was setting correctly. And yet when we look at the brick portion of this, how straight it is, how correct it is with the orientation, north to south, east to west. If you take a compass, it's almost dead on. Like someone with high skills did that. And if we talk about the working tools that they used, you know, they had to have used a square. They had to have used compasses to make the radiuses in this. And they also had to use a plumb line. But Dale, what's a plumb line? Good question. Let's walk back down to the shop and let's talk about a plumb line. So a plumb line. So a lot of us have heard the word plumb. Is that in plumb? Is it straight? Right? But we don't really know what a plumb line is. In the earliest times, stonemasons referred to the plumb line. So, what's a plumb line? Well, in those super early times, right? It was a string or a piece of sinew or rope with a heavy item, typically a rock, tied to the bottom of it. Now, what happens to that string line when you hold it straight down? Well, of course, gravity holds it perfectly straight. If I'm uneven on whatever I build, my plumb line will not be straight. So we must hold the plumb line straight with the object, and its direction towards the ground will make sure that it is straight and true. Now I know you're asking yourself, what's that have to do with the Bible or a devotional? Brings me to today's passage and verse. Let's have a sit. Let's talk for a minute, if you don't mind. First of all, let me get out these old man devices here. And I'm going to pull out my NIV Bible. We're going to be in Amos, chapter 7. And it reads as follows. This is what the sovereign Lord showed me. He was preparing swarms of locusts after the king's share had been harvested, and just as the late crops were coming up, when they had stripped the land clean, I cried out, Sovereign Lord, forgive! How can Jacob survive? He is so small. This will not happen, the Lord said. This is what the sovereign Lord showed me. The sovereign Lord was calling for judgment by fire. It dried up the great deep and devoured the land. Then I cried out, Sovereign Lord, I beg you, stop. How can Jacob survive? He is so small. So the Lord relented. This will not happen either, the sovereign Lord said. And this is where I want to direct you. So chapter 7, verse 7 begins today's verse and passage. This is what he showed me. The Lord was standing by a wall that had been built true to plumb, with a plumb line in his hand, and the Lord asked me, What do you see, Amos? A plumb line, I replied. Then the Lord said, Look, I am setting a plumb line among my people, Israel. I will spare them no longer. May the Lord add his blessings to the reading of the word. So let's retell this story. So the Lord was upset with all the sin that was happening in the world. And he was at his wit's end, and he was trying to take care of that sin, wash it away, burn it away by fire. And he was begged again and again, Lord, please stop. Lord, please help me. And our Lord listened to those cries of help, just like he listens to your cries of help when you pray audibly or inaudibly to him. And our Lord stopped. And then he drew attention to Amos. And he sat upon a wall. And he asked Amos, Amos, what is this in my hand? And Amos responded, a plumb line. And the Lord said, I'm going to set a plumb line among my people. What do you think that the Lord meant by I'm going to set a plumb line among my people? We've all talked about the fact that we're not to judge others. There's only one true judge in this world, and that's the Lord. And that will come on all of our judgment day. But the Lord has showed us that plumb line. He has shown us the great architecture that it takes to be plumb and true in this world. It's through the written word. As long as we follow his laws and his practices and make ourselves more Christ-like, we'll always be true to plumb. The Lord has given us a true definition of what is right and wrong, and it all boils down to the plumb line. Are you following along the plumb line? Till next time, farm on. Keep strong. I love you, and so does God.